Hi, this is Ryan. It's December 11th, 2016. You can check us out at clovisstar.com. This is an update about the Bundy brothers, Ammon and Ryan Bundy, who participated in the protest in Oregon for Dwight and Stephen Hammond. They did a great job bringing attention to that. They were acquitted of that last month, the standoff that they were on trial for. All 7 defendants were acquitted in that trial. And on December 9th, roughly a day ago, the Bundy brothers refused to attend a court hearing in Nevada. So this is opb.org, and this comes out of Oregon. 2 sons of Nevada cattleman Ammon Bundy refused to attend, and several co-defendants shouted an oath to defiance at the end of a federal court hearing to scheduled trials for 17 men accused of conspiring to take up arms against federal agents in April 2014. A U.S. magistrate judge decided not to order marshals to bring Ammon and Ryan Bundy to court by force, but so the 2 Bundy sons, who were acquitted of federal charges in Oregon wildlife refuge occupation, remained in a nearby holding cell. They were provided a speaker to hear the Las Vegas court proceedings. Another co-defendant, Pete Santelli, blurted out that the 2 did not want to be shackled. The judge made no immediate rulings on a range of arguments, including prosecutors' request to have the 3 trials and defendants' request to be tried together beginning February 6 or in groups of their choosing. I can't even believe that they are wasting any more money on this. It's crazy. I mean, they are not guilty of defending their own land against an armed occupation of federal agents on their own property, stealing cattle from them in 2014, where BLM and other agents went to their land, took over 100 head of cattle, over $100,000 worth of property, destroyed it, killed the cattle, buried it in the ground, didn't even use it for any, useful purposes. I guess they brought some of the cattle back, but they found mass graves of these cows that they stole. And so they took up arms and said, you cannot be on our property. This is our property. They have, property rights. They have 4th Amendment rights. They have, the 10th Amendment rights of just property ownership in that state. And, the right to actually own that property is defined well in the Constitution, and it defines it. And I wanted to go into this because of an argument we had on my Facebook video about my armed protest vigil for Lavoy Finicum. I had a couple people say, well, they can't dispute federal property even with the terms of adverse possession and blah, blah, blah. But, we got into Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and I wanted to go a little bit into that, especially because these guys keep deleting their comments. Like, they'll make a big ass out of themselves and pretend like they know the Constitution and chide me saying that they know all about it, and then it comes down to they do not know anything about it, at least from the appearance of their conversation here. So, a grown man, believes there's a law in the books that allow you to take someone's property from them by merely continuously occupying it for 7 to 10 years. Why didn't they take Trump Tower, or property they grazed their welfare cattle on, from the federal government? They say, and this guy devolved into a petty name-calling argument and said that he wouldn't come back and argue anymore. And then three days later, he comes back and he starts these little arguments, these silly little arguments. But I wanted to clear this up before he deletes his silly comments. Not that he has any ownership of it. These guys that come with these silly arguments usually have no accountability. They have no videos on Facebook, and they really don't want anybody to know who they are because of how silly their arguments are. But he raised good points here. And he says, adverse possession can never be used to claim ownership of land that belongs to the state or the United States of America. Now, the ranch land was owned by ranchers before the federal government set claim on it in the 40s, with the BLM. The BLM started consuming land and taking land illegally. There's no clause in the Constitution that allows that. People will cite the property clause, but the property clause only pertains to territories and wastelands east of Missouri. You can see, east of the Mississippi, so Missouri, but the property clause, which only applies to western wastelands, territories east of the Mississippi that were ceded to the federal government by the original states. And here's how it's defined in Article 1. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. So if it's a state, they can't lay these property clause claims on the state, except for forts, magazines, and 10 miles around D.C. And that's well defined here. I laid it out for the guy. So, you know, the property that the BLM claims that belongs to them does not belong to them. It can't. It's illogically claimed by them because it doesn't fit the confines of the Constitution. So I said the government had no legitimate claim on that land because by definitions in the Constitution it simply cannot own the land there in Harney County for the purposes that it says it's using it for. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And, you know, it even was reasserted in a Supreme Court case, the U.S. versus Knight Company, 156 U.S. Title 11, U.S. Court declared, it cannot be denied that the power of the state to protect the lives, health, and property of its citizens and preserve good and order of the property of public morals, the power to govern men and things within the limits of its dominion is the power originally and will always be belonging to the state, not surrendered to the general federal government, nor directly restrained by the Constitution of the United States, and essentially exclusive. So the government does illegal stuff all the time. It does not mean they are right. Can you at least spend more than 1 minute on Googling before you pop off? And then he goes into more of this with the Constitution. The enclave clause, he says, is really more about government jurisdiction than ownership. The government can have an enclave in which much of the territory is titled to private parties. It is true in Washington, D.C. It's just an enclave. Federal rather than state jurisdiction is supreme. Enclaves may be held only for enumerated purposes as signaled by the use of the 18th century legal term needful. State consent to creation of the enclave, and the consent can be conditional upon the federal government honoring particular terms. Now, I had to give him a little bit more here. And he says Oregon wasn't even a state until nearly 100 years after the Constitution was signed. Therefore, Harney County was non-existent as well. No, and I'm going to define that here because that's not true. BLM was created in 1946. It's BLM that say they own that land in Harney County. Harney County has almost 10,000 miles of land, 10,000 square miles of land, and the BLM controls 72% of it, which is beyond their boundaries, and I'll prove that in just a minute. Oregon, however, was founded as a state long before the BLM was founded. Oregon became a state in 1859, and even before that, ranchers had owned that land where the BLM says they currently own that land. So it was not state property, it was private property, and the BLM started taking that for from the Department of Natural Resources for claims of so-called needful use, which doesn't apply to states, only territories, and 10 miles around Washington, D.C. So let's go into that a little bit more. I said that doesn't exempt it from the Constitution. You, sir, are changing the topic quite a bit. First, you say there's no law that allows someone to take land. That is untrue. Adverse possession allows that. As to the statement that you made about enclaves may be held for only enumerated purposes, yes, and enumerated purposes are quite clearly defined in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, so period, in whatever district, it can't exceed 10 miles square, and may be cession of a particular state, and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So 10 miles is another restriction that we see in this, 10 square miles, right? So if they own 72% of 10,000 square miles, that's far more than 10 square miles, right? So that's already breaking their restrictions in the Constitution. I said none of these things include national parks, BLM land, or the alike. So let's go over these things one by one. Quote, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. The BLM in Harney County exceeds these limitations. There is 9,930 miles of land in Harney County, and the BLM controls 72% of it. That's quite a bit more than 12 miles in a district, or 10 miles in a district. Quote, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and needful buildings. So let's go over it one by one. Erection of forts. Is that BLM? No, not the same or similar. Magazines, is that BLM? No, not the same or similar. Arsenals, BLM? No, not the same or similar. Dockyards, BLM? No, not the same or similar. Other needful buildings. I said this is ambiguous. However, let's pretend that the BLM falls under this clause. The 10-mile limit restriction defined in the Constitution has been far exceeded and therefore is not constitutionally authorized. And so I gave some links, and I'll put those links in the description. Here they are here. And then he starts going to say, oh, what was it? And this is just something I'll click on, or I'll point out really quick. He says, Reverend Ryan is Clovis Starr. They are the same person. He cannot find any support for his ludicrous arguments, so he opted to support himself with an alternate personality. So all of my channels, including this one, Reverend Ryan, which I've had since 2007, have videos of me with my name, my face, my links to my websites, my location, my voice. I mean, it identifies me. I have multiple projects, and I want to point those out. If you go to clovistar.com, the homepage, I've had all of my projects listed here for a long time, as well as on xcannabis.com. So you can see, yeah, we own Hemp Motor Company, Hempdone, Hemp Strategies, xcannabis.com, and that's the one that I have associated with Reverend Ryan because I'm an ordained minister, and xCannabis is my Christians for Cannabis website. So that's one different project than these political projects that I work on. I work on some religious, I work on some political, I work on some environmental. There's Clovis Star, which is our newspaper, and there's Clovis Tribe, which is my ode to fighting racism. And these are just a few of my projects. I have over 30 websites, but these are the ones that I work on regularly. And that's the website, clovistar.com, that I advertise on this channel. And so if anybody wanted to go to my website, clovistar.com, they would see exactly who I am and that I control multiple different channels for multiple different purposes. And I categorize them differently because I want to convey different messages, some political, some religious, some environmental, some about travel, some about, family. So I have a whole bunch of different options here. Anyway, I said, that's not important. You can go and read these, but before he deleted these, I wanted to capture these because I had another guy recently. We had a conversation of about 50 different exchanges, and then one day I woke up and I seen that he'd replied twice, and then apparently he deleted everything. So I still have them in my email box. All of these comments go to my email box, but I just wanted to kind of put this in context here in case they ever did get deleted. I try not to delete or block or, whatever. You can see right here I have nobody. Oh, I guess I do. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 muted. These are hidden users. Comments from these users won't show up, although I still allow them to comment. So apparently I have muted these people. I'm not sure why. Oh, I know what it is. I went and looked at each one of these people's profiles, and they were brand new profiles. They had no videos, they had no identification, they had no accountability. And after searching their URL in Google, I found that they were commenting on YouTube, but only on my channel. and they were just using trolling and divisive statements, nothing about the content and nothing about the context of the video. They were just trying to distract and, have a little childish war with words, but they had no accountability. So instead of just arguing back and forth with them and wasting my time, I just muted them. But I just unmuted them. There's nobody muted or hidden anymore, so if they want to respond, as long as they're respectful and as long as they have a little accountability, I don't mind. And if I do block them, of course, maybe that'll motivate them to make their own videos. This is, however, and after all, a video sharing website. So check us out at clovisstar.com, clovistribe.com, xcannabis.com. I like to say things once and then be done with it. Instead of arguing back and forth over and over. I used to do that because, I used to be on bulletin board systems or forums before YouTube, and I would talk about politics or religion, and I would go back and forth, and I would, talk about things. But often I'd have to rehash things. I couldn't just have a video that explained my point of view and then just repost the link, like I do with YouTube now. I would have to go into the arguments and spend an hour or two, talking back and forth with a person to get my point across. But with YouTube, I can say it once on a video and it's done. And I've said everything I have to say. Also, I want you to check out bundyranch.com. We just donated $25 to them. They have a court date coming up February 6, 2016. Please donate to them. Maybe let the Christmas spirit motivate you to give. They need money for legal fees to help their family while they're in jail. They're obviously locked up and not making money, and they have kids and they have wives. So donate to these people. There's multiple different links for Carol Bundy, Carol and Cliven, Marilyn Bundy, which is Dave Bundy, Ammon's brother, Ryan Bundy, Ryan and Angel, Lisa Bundy, which is Ammon's wife, Lisa and Ammon Bundy, and Mel and Brianna Bundy. They're all in jail right now. They all have somebody in their family in jail, and they all need some help. So we've contributed what we could this year. I hope other people get motivated to donate. Thanks for tuning in. This is Ryan. Peace.